Welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, Daniel James, and as always, if you're new here, welcome. Before I get into today's podcast, I just want to let you know that next Wednesday the 20th of November, at 8 to 9 p.m. UK time, I'll be hosting a free live workshop called the Mental Health Toolkit, where I'll be helping you to build better days. I'll be going over 3 key areas that will help you take back control and move your life forward. If you're interested, it is completely free. Click in the link down below and register for the event. There's only a limited number of spaces available. I promise you, if you've been enjoying the podcast, this is something that you will not want to miss. One of the benefits of this being a live workshop is you can also ask me questions at the end or as we go through. So whatever questions that you have, I'll make sure that I answer them for you. Now today I want to talk about the 5 steps to break free from negative thought cycles. Now, these negative cycles, not just necessarily thought cycles, it could be emotional cycles or it could be behaviours. But whatever it is, it's patterns that we repeat that are negative and negatively impact our life. So although at the start there I said negative thought cycles, yes, that's the main one that we will all struggle with, but it could be emotional, it could also be the behaviours. But whatever it is, it's things that aren't productive, they're negative for us, and they are massively impacting our life. So the 5 steps that we can take to break free are, number 1, pause and recognize. We want to pause and just notice, what pattern are we stuck in? Is it a recurring negative thought? Are we stuck in a negative emotion? Or are we taking that negative behavior that we know doesn't benefit us and lead us towards the life that we want? But in order to recognize it, we have to pause. Because sometimes we can keep on going, and we know that we're kind of stuck in this negativity, but we don't just stop. Because by stopping, we can take a step back and notice. Not only notice, we can observe. And then, more importantly, we can ask ourselves, what triggered this cycle? What was the thing that triggered this negative thought pattern? What was the thing that caused me to go down this negative feelings and emotions? What was the trigger that caused me to start behaving in a way that isn't congruent to the person that I know I am? Because when we start to ask these questions, we can get the answers. But it starts with, number 1, pausing and recognizing. Step 2 is then challenging the narrative. Whatever narrative we have about these emotions, behaviors, or thoughts, we want to separate the facts from our interpretation. Because a lot of the time we create stories about why we're feeling this way and where did it come from. But we want to just look at the facts. And what we want to do is we want to just take a step back, like we said in the first part, and then maybe write down what the facts are. What facts do we actually have? And then what are the things that we're either interpreting or that we are creating in our head or that we are exaggerating? Because then once we've got it written down and we can see it clearly, it then just sort of takes the sting out of it a little bit. And then from there, we can then notice, right, out of these thoughts that I've got that are potentially interpretations, stories, or some of the facts that are there, what evidence do I have for and against these thoughts that I have about what I've written down? So you can have these facts, you can have these interpretations and these stories. Okay, so these interpretations and these stories, they're clearly created by our thoughts. Like we've thought certain things which has led to these interpretations. We've thought certain things that have led to these stories. So we want to ask ourselves, right, what evidence do we have to support the thoughts that we have about our interpretations? Are there any facts that come into play about our interpretation? Are there any facts from the stories that we're telling ourselves? Because a lot of the time there will be some facts and truth in the stories. The problem is there's so much fluff around it, we can't actually get to the actual essence that we want, the actual things. But once it's written down, we've got it out of our head, it becomes a lot easier to see. The analogy that I use with this is when we have these thoughts, these patterns, it's like having it in a washing machine, and we stick that sock in, which is the initial thought, and it spins around, and then we just stick more and more and more clothes into this washing machine, and then what happens is when it's spinning around, we then can't see the original thought. So what we need to do is just empty the drum, get all the clothes out on the floor, and then we can actually see what's there. It's very hard to think clearly inside our own head. So once we've paused and recognized the pattern, the second thing is challenge the narrative and really separate the facts and interpretations. And then even in the interpretations of stories, really look at, are there any facts in there? Number 3, create a pattern interrupt. Because this whole thing that we're talking about today is we're having these negative cycles, and these cycles are patterns. So once we're in the cycle, we then want to interrupt the pattern. And interrupting the pattern can be super, super simple. So once you notice that you're in this negative spiral, whether it is the thoughts, the emotions, or the behaviors, break the cycle, do something different. It could be going for a walk. It could be laughing. Now, what I mean by that is don't just sit there and fake laugh, although that can work. Maybe look on YouTube or look on Instagram and look for some comedy and just have a laugh. Find something that makes you laugh, because laughing then disrupts that pattern. Maybe listen to some happy music, because again, what can happen is we get into this negative thought pattern. We can start to feel negative, and we can start to get into these negative actions and behaviors. We then make it worse by listening to breakup music, listening to those sad songs. We know that we all do it. But by disrupting that pattern and turning on some happy music and maybe having a laugh, having a dance, we're changing our state. By changing our state, it will then change the emotions and the thoughts that we're having. And then that will then lead to the change in the behaviors that we're actually taking. And if we are really getting caught up in our body, because sometimes that can happen, it absolutely can. And when we get caught up in our body, maybe just taking some mindful breaths. So maybe the negative cycle we're getting into can cause us to get shortened breath. And when we get shortened breath, we can really become chest dominant. So we breathe through our chest rather than through our belly and through our diaphragm. So can we just stop and take some big, deep, mindful breaths from the diaphragm? Because when we do this, taking a nice, long exhale, so that long exhale is actually what gets us into the parasympathetic state, that calming state. And also, you have to, I'll have to apologize for my bunged up nose on the inhale there. So that's number 3. The thing we can do then is just create a pattern interrupt, whatever that is for you. So just change the pattern, change the path that we're going down. Number 4, use success banks. Now, you've all heard me talk about winning the day. And by winning the day, we can sort of build that momentum. Very similar concept here. So when you do notice you're getting these negative cycles, maybe it is hard to pattern interrupt, maybe it is hard to break that cycle. But what you can do is at the end of every single day, record 3 wins or things that you did well that day. Just 3 wins. I don't care how small they are, just write them down. And it could be that you made your bed. It could be that you drank 2 liters of water. And it could be that you got 5 minutes of fresh air. Cool. Or it could be that you didn't doom scroll for 4 hours. It was only 3 hours. Whatever it is, write down 3 small little wins every single day. Because what happens is these 3 things that you do every day build up. It becomes 3 one day. Then next you've got 6 now, 9, then 12. And it slowly builds up. So now what you've got is this bank of wins. So when you are getting into this negative spiral, you can go and you can look at these 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 30, 36 wins and be like, actually, do you know what? I'm not as useless as I think I am. I'm not as, whatever it is, whatever that narrative is, you're changing the narrative, because what you're doing is you've now got evidence against that negative self-talk. So whatever that little voice is saying to you, you can break it by going into that positivity bank, success bank, and just rereading all the wins you've got, because these small wins will build up, they'll compound. So as you're flicking through this, you're like, oh, wow, yeah, I did that. Yeah, I did. Oh, wow, yeah, actually, yeah. And then what you're doing, let's go back to the second step, you're using facts. You're using facts to break down this negative self-talk. Because a lot of the time, this negative self-talk that we've got, there's not really much facts to back it up. They are just stories that we're telling ourselves. They're just interpretations. And we find it really hard to disrupt that pattern. And having this success bank can help, like we said with the point number 3, step number 3, and just disrupt the pattern. Because when you're faced with evidence that goes against what that voice is saying, it's very hard for it to then be like, no, because you're seeing it with your own eyes. And you can't really deceive your senses like that. And the final step to break out of these negative cycles is to take imperfect action. Because a lot of the time when we're stuck in these negative cycles, we can put our life on hold. And we can think, do you know what, when things are perfect, and when I feel great, then I'll start to live again. No. Start to take imperfect action. Just take one small step forward wherever you are. No matter how imperfect it is, just take that one small step forward. Just do what you can to keep on going, to keep moving your life in the direction that you want it to go. And some days they're going to suck, and that's okay. Just make sure that you dust yourself off and go again. Hope you've taken value from today's episode. Don't forget to register for the live free workshop that I've got going on next week on Wednesday, the 20th of November, 8 till 9 p.m, all about the mental toolbox. Until next time, take it easy.